Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us, Future Frontiers, today. It's wonderful to see so many of you here, and I'm just really sorry we couldn't be doing this in person, but I hope everyone's managed to supply their own biscuits for the next hour. Most people on the call should know Future Frontiers, and thank you for your continued support. For those who don't, if there is anyone that doesn't, we're Future Frontiers. We're an education and social mobility charity, and we're really excited to be doing this virtual event today. We're really excited to be introducing you to Raza, who's a head teacher and new trustee, and also we've got new pupils who will be speaking later on as well. I just wanted to tell you a bit more about what you can expect in the next hour. First of all, you'll be hearing from Raza, who, as I mentioned, is a head teacher of a state comprehensive in Luton and our new trustee. After that, you'll be hearing from Dominic, who is our founder and CEO. And then we're very excited to welcome Thomas, who is a pupil in Year 12 who's done our programme online this year. We'll then hand over to Rob, who's our head of data and impact, and he'll be talking to you about some of the impact we've seen and some plans going forward. And finally, we'll be hearing from Shakira, who did our programme a couple of years ago and is now studying law. After this, we'll open the floor up to questions. We're really keen to hear from you. I'm really delighted to be handing over to Raza.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Tess, for the introduction. My name is Raza Ali. I am head teacher of the Chalk Hills Academy in Luton. And as Tess just said, I also have the privilege of being a trustee for Future Frontiers. Before I start, I mean, it is an incredible organisation. Yes, I've only been here for a short time in terms of a trustee, but the work that Dominic and his team are doing is phenomenal. It's certainly the work and the support that schools are crying out for right now, and I'll talk about that in just a second. So, as I said, this is yes, it's a great organisation, but due to our current situation, the help that Future Frontiers can give to schools like myself is much needed, and it's needed now. The reason for that is because we know Future Frontiers does some fantastic work with disadvantaged students and from all sorts of backgrounds. But the barriers that students are facing, some of these you might be familiar with, but certainly the ones that I've seen, both as a student of disadvantage myself, but also currently now serving as head teacher of a disadvantaged community. The first one is around sort of advice, key information, and lack of guidance. I mean, yes, teachers are experts in their areas of specialism, and yes, we might have some colleagues within the building that can offer some advice, but is this the best advice, and is this the advice that are really going to take our disadvantaged students to that next level? And I don't think we have that best piece of advice. We certainly don't have the industry advice that some of our supporters can offer, and that's something that we are really crying out for, or certainly our students are crying out for. Disadvantaged students, it's well known, it's all over the media and certainly all over research, that they don't have the same opportunities, connections and networks as their affluent peers. We try to provide them opportunities, but it's not the sort of same opportunities that some students get down the road. Partly that's because of funding that schools have, but partly it's also because we don't have those connections and networks. I wish we did. I mean, we try to engage with businesses and so on, but certainly it's not the quality or the influence it has that it can have, and that's something that we certainly feel that we are restricted by. Young people, certainly the ones that we serve, in some cases they have no role models, and the ones that do have, or some that do have, they have very few role models. Many of our young people live in very challenging families. Many of them are single parents. Many of our single parent families work 0-hour contracts, they work night shifts, and that means essentially where they might want to have time to sit down and have those conversations around future aspirations, etc. They're not always able to have that. And that kind of brings me on to my next point around encouragement. It's very hard to give encouragement sometimes. I mean, we can do it certainly when the students come through our gates and certainly by the time they leave, but encouragement doesn't just rely on what you see at school. It needs to happen at home. It needs to happen as many times as possible. And some of these students need that encouragement, and coaching and mentoring certainly is a way that that can happen. There also are a number of challenges that schools face. The first one being opportunity costs. I'm in a situation right now where I've opened up the school for key worker and vulnerable students, but I have an opportunity cost whereby I have to use any additional funding that I get from the government, for example. I have to use that towards hand sanitizers. I have to use that towards extra cleaning. I have to use that towards buying laptops and making sure our students have access to internet at home through dongles. I wish I could have the money to use for careers and giving them advice, but if I'm facing that sort of choice, I have to go with the first choice, which is ensuring our students of key workers and vulnerable families are supported. Like I said earlier on, there's always a funding issue, and that's not just right now, that's been historic, and likelihood is that's actually going to happen going forward as well. The government has said, yes, they're pouring in more funding towards laptops. Yes, that's true, but funding isn't just laptops. It's paying for staff. It's making sure our schools are open for as long as we can. It's providing students with opportunities, like we said earlier on, and we don't have the funding for that right now. We also don't have the expertise within schools as well. Yes, we've got a careers advisor, but our careers advisor is nowhere near as good as some of the first-hand advice that industry experts can give. And certainly, like we said, with the networks and connections that I mentioned earlier on, we don't have those strong connections with businesses and organizations that I know many schools, certainly my one, would love to have. And it's not just one-off connections, or it's not just one-off relationships. We want to create sustainable relationships that we can really have lasting impact on our young people. So again, this has been documented quite clearly around the news. I mean, the pandemic has certainly widened inequality in our society, and that's probably most evident, in my opinion, when you actually come to schools, or when you certainly focus on young people. This lockdown, we know it's a second lockdown, one of many, and I was actually working this out not too long ago, but actually some of our students have now missed almost an entire year of schooling, and that's going to be detrimental to their future prospects, because that's going to have a domino effect. Yes, we can play catch up, but that's going to be very challenging. Young people are confused right now. If you speak to year 11 students, if you speak to year 13 students that are embarking on university, they're still not sure what's going to happen in the summer. We saw some of the chaos that happened with grades last year. And yes, the government have announced a little bit earlier this year that they're going to award what they call centre assessment grades. But in terms of the logistics behind that, that still hasn't been released. And people say, do you know the answers? I said, I don't know the answers. And if I don't know the answers, how can I expect young people and families to know the answers as well? So young people are very confused right now. Naturally, like I said, because of that missed schooling, and yes, the other thing to note is we are doing remote learning at the moment. But you know and I know remote learning is not a substitute for face-to-face teaching. Schools are working incredibly hard. My teachers right now start their teaching at 8:30 and give an amazing remote experience to our young learners up until 3 o'clock every single day. But that's not gonna be a substitute for face-to-face teaching. And because of that, there's always going to be growing attainment gaps amongst our students. And I think most important of all, by students staying in front of screens, by students staying at home, unfortunately, that's also going to have a massive effect on their mental health and well-being. Again, we can try to look at activities that get students away from the screen, but certainly that's not enough, especially when you're stuck at home for most of the time. But I don't want to sort of just paint all this doom and gloom and think actually there is no solution, because there is a solution and there is hope. The amount of students I speak to on a daily basis, it's very surprising, or it might not be surprising, but students are desperate to return to school. They're desperate to return to normality. I was a bit surprised when students say that, because I thought, okay, maybe staying at home is luxury for many of them, but they said, actually, no, we really want to come back to school now. We miss our friends, we miss that normality, we miss teachers, surprisingly, as well, but they really want to come back as soon as possible. This is more so the case, though, for disadvantaged students. Disadvantaged students they work best when they have structure and when they have routine. So when they have school, they're forced to wake up at a certain time. They're forced to put on their uniform. They're forced to come to school. When you don't have school and you're not forced to wake up at a certain time, that really, really has a detrimental effect on their routine and their day. So that's the reason why we do need to hopefully get back to school as soon as possible and then have some of that intervention in place. It's really, really important, though, we also have positivity. So we try to be, I say to my staff, I don't want to use deficit language in my school. I don't want to say, oh my God, we've missed so much schooling and there's so much to do yet. No, let's forget about what's happened before. Let's focus on how we're going to move forward. And certainly Future Frontiers, I know, they have some fantastic coaches and mentors, etc. And that's something that I would strongly advise. When you do engage with young people, it's really, really important you remain positive. And in line with that, it's really, really important that when you engage with young people at the moment, you're setting up a really, really clear map in terms of how we're going to move forward. I always say to students, look, life is never a straight line. We still want to get to the same end goal sometimes, but sometimes we have to reroute, but we can still get to the end goal that you want to achieve. So it's really, really important, not just we're positive, but we also have a really, really clear map that's going to support many of our students, many of those students that are confused right now, but many of those students that lack encouragement. And if we can offer that, and I know Future Frontiers is amazing at that too, then we have a chance of turning this around. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Raza. It's brilliant to hear how schools are responding to such a challenging time and continuing to offer pupils so much support. As Raza's just touched upon, we're fully into the second year of disruption caused by COVID for schools, for Future Frontiers, and not least for our young people. It's been a challenging year to say the least, but we are also pleased that we've been able to continue to support young people throughout this time. Last April, we moved our programme online, and we're continuing to deliver career coaching and access to professional role models via an online platform, rather than bringing our pupils into the offices of the business partners. We are still completely committed and behind our face-to-face delivery model. And while we've seen good early indications of impact of the online programme, we will be moving back to a face-to-face model as soon as it is safe and possible to do so. So the numbers on the screen there just show you the number of young people we've supported, the number of businesses we've partnered with and schools since the pandemic began last March. Alongside this, we've been doing some work to really get to the root causes of some of the problems that pop up at the post-16 transition. And I'm going to be handing over to Dom, who's going to talk about that further. He's our founder and CEO. He's going to be talking about our approach and our evolving approach and focus area as well.
Great, thanks Tess very much, and thanks Raza for that really helpful insight into what's going on in schools. I thought it was really interesting stuff. So what I'd love to do today is just give you a bit of an insight into what Future Frontiers has been working on and where we're going to be focusing our support. I would like to show you an infographic that we produced, which outlines some of the problems that young people are facing at those two key transition points. And to sort of echo really what Raza has talked about there, at age 16 and 18, young people are facing critical transitions where the decisions that they're going to make will have lifelong consequences. And getting this right can set them onto a path that will open up opportunities for them. But very often, sadly, as the statistics show in front of you, young people from disadvantaged backgrounds are underachieving here and missing out. And that can often limit them to employment opportunities that are low skilled, low paid, and with very few opportunities to progress. So over the last 12 months, Future Frontiers has been taking a close look at this national picture. And we've been trying to understand some of the specific problems that are taking place at those transition points. The research that we did was harder than we thought, mostly because actually what we really wanted to work out is why these problems were happening and then what we could do about it. And many of the drivers behind those statistics aren't self-evident. So as you can see, young people from disadvantaged backgrounds are consistently more likely to underperform when they are progressing, sustaining, and then attaining in their post-16 and post-18 transitions. That's the common themes that we saw. The table that appears next gives the details of some of the gaps that we see specifically in that post-16 transition point. And that's an area that we know can become a really dangerous cliff edge, particularly for young people who are in that lower to middle ability. And Future Frontiers has decided that we want to totally focus our work in this area of post-16 transitions. And it's because we think that this is an area that is a root cause of so many of the problems that are more widely seen and talked about later on down the line. We've consulted really widely to try and understand why these problems are occurring. We've spoken to teachers, senior leaders, careers advisors who've got that experience. And we believe that at the heart of it is a lack of high quality guidance and access to networks. And the more obvious sort of chain reaction from that lack of guidance comes from simply having unnurtured aspirations. This was why Future Frontiers was set up, and partly my and some of the founding members of Future Frontiers, our experience in the classroom is seeing how ambitious young people could be, but without taking the time to really nurture those aspirations, there was a massively missed opportunity to tap into that motivation. So therefore, a lack of unclear goals, untapped drive and untapped motivation, it's not surprising that that can lead students to underperform academically. And we've seen again more research in the last 12 months that's shown a really important link between ambition and attainment at GCSE level. Probably a more startling fact that we've understood more about is the stark lack of contingency planning that's happening for young people who are at risk of not getting 5 good GCSEs, which unfortunately is actually the majority of young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. And those kids that are on that 3-4 sort of C/D grade boundary have got to be selecting and applying for really high quality courses that are delivered by high quality education institutes early on in their final year of study in year 11. Those that don't, and also fail to get those 5 good GCSEs that might keep them in their secondary sixth forms, will likely enter into a kind of results day scramble where they struggle to find a good quality qualification in a new school or college. And when that happens, pupils can very easily end up on a low quality course, poorly suited to their goals and their aspirations, which can lead further to underachievement and high dropout rates. Crucially, with all of this that we've seen, all of this is avoidable if we can provide support at the right time and of the right quality. So Future Frontiers, we believe it is really well placed to offer direct support to young people who are hardest hit by the lack of access to good guidance and access to professional networks. It's probably worth pointing out that all of this research was done pre-COVID. The statistics that we're referring to there are as a result of the lack of guidance before students were out of school. So the impact will only be worse now, but we're expecting that, you know, this problem to continue even when things get back to normal. And our principal design is based on the belief that all young people can be motivated by their aspirations if they can discover a career that really inspires them and can make a clear plan for achieving success. Our core program that many of the businesses who are on the line, our delivery partners, will be most familiar with, consists of 3 main areas. It's the main bulk of it is face-to-face coaching delivered by our volunteers, access to sector role models, and culminating in a pathways and career plan. But we're really pleased to announce today that in order to support young people when it really counts, we're developing an extended program of support for students in their final year of GCSE study. And that's going to include one-to-one support from a level 6 careers advisor to provide detailed guidance when students need to be applying for their post-16 qualifications. We'll also be engaging more with teachers and parents during that final year to ensure that students are maintaining the momentum they've established during that year 10 coaching program. And in results day, we'll be providing support there for pupils that need it. And we believe that this recipe across both years can deliver transformational impact on the trajectories of young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. So that's our goal, that's what we want to do, and hopefully that's given a useful insight into what Future Frontiers will be focusing on programmatically. It's worth pointing out that in our 4-year strategy, which is being launched over the summer, we'll be setting out a roadmap of how Future Frontiers will prioritise the design, delivery, and the evaluation of all of our programs. Those 3 things are going to be the priority above all else at Future Frontiers, including growth, so that we can be confident ensuring we are delivering life-changing impact. And we want to do that before we look to achieve more rapid scale across the UK. So I'm pleased to wrap up there and hand back to Tess, who's going to introduce one of the students that's been on our programme this year.
Thank you, Dom. I'm delighted now to introduce you all to Thomas. Thomas has done our programme online this year with Coach Jodie from our business partner, James Hambro. And he engaged really well with the programme, and I'm really excited to be sharing his story with you today. It's great to see you again, Thomas, and thanks for joining today. If you'd just like to quickly introduce yourself, and then I know when we spoke a couple of days ago, you wanted to talk about your reflection of the main benefit of doing the Future Frontiers programme.
My name is Thomas. I'm 17 and I go to St. George's. And for me, what I really liked about the programme is that it was a sort of like an anchor in between to what young people need. So like even like myself making that transition from secondary school to sixth form, it can be quite challenging because, you know, you have friends who are taking a different path, and more so because it's like there's no guidance or you're not exposed to certain things. So I think what the program does is that it will expose young people to a sort of wider vision that they can grow up and they can achieve their goals. And for me, joining the program, making that transition, it sort of allowed me to figure out what I wanted to do, because at first I didn't know what I wanted to do or what career path to take. But then the program sort of gave me that guidance and it sort of allowed me to explore different things.
Great, thank you. And I know when we spoke the other day, Thomas, you kind of summed that up in a bit of a moment of panic, which I really resonated with, and said that I went through a similar stage of panic when I was in year 12. Could you tell us a bit more about the programme and your working with Jodie and what that was like, what you did?
So for me, what I liked about the programme was working with Jodie is that she was also like young, so she was able to relate with the problems or the things that I struggled with, which was I was in the borderline of choosing IT or business, but I didn't know what one I wanted to choose. And she told me her story and she spoke to me about how she didn't know what she wanted to do and she ended up doing history, but then at uni she ended up going to do finance. So it made me understand that I don't need to rush and that there's no harm in trying out new things. And also what really helped was we used a website, Career Pilot. So I was able to go through the different career paths and the roles and see what it looks like on a day-to-day task. So that really helped because I was able to narrow down that IT and business are very much interlinked. So if I wanted to do IT, I can probably get the same role in business. So then it made me understand that I would like to go down the computer science path because I would like to sort of create something that could build a path for maybe the next generation or build a platform.
Wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that the programme gave you that clarity, Thomas. It's good to hear that talking to Jodie helped and hearing her experience. Did you speak to anyone else? Was Jodie able to connect you with people in other industries?
Yeah, she managed to connect me with a data analyst in Australia. And what helped was because she was Jodie's friend, it was very comfortable speaking to her. So it didn't seem as if she was just a person who was far away and was just in this sort of big industry. So I was able to sort of speak to her, and what she spoke to me about was she told me about what they look for because she works at a recruitment agency. So she told me about how they recruit people, and that helped me because now that when I know if I want to apply for a data and analyst role, I will know what they're looking for and I'll know the ins and outs.
Great. And so what's coming next for you, Thomas? What did you map out towards the end of the programme about what your next steps look like?
So for me, I was going to go to uni, and right now I'm looking at going to maybe King's College or one of the other Russell Group unis to study computer science and just go from there and maybe just see what I could build in the future that can inspire the next generation.
Oh, well, it's wonderful, and I'm very excited to hear about your plans, as I'm sure everyone else on the call is. And I know when we caught up the other day, there was a couple of things that you wanted to say to Jodie. Did you want to say anything now?
I would like to say thank you, for making me feel comfortable and for also sharing her story, because it made me realize that as young people, we tend to panic because we don't know. We want everything to flow and we want to sort of see our future ahead of time. But she made me understand that there's time and that I don't need to rush things. And because I'm young, I can always try out new things. So that's what I'd like to thank her for.
Wonderful, wonderful. I actually think Jodie hopefully has joined the call as well today. So Jodie, if you have joined the call and you'd like to say anything, please do feel free to.
Yeah, perfect. And I'm here. Thank you, Thomas. That's really sweet. I would just say I was very daunted going into the programme. I've never done any kind of coaching form at all before. One reason I kind of wanted to give it a go is I can actually really resonate, obviously, as Thomas already touched on. I feel like in sixth form, it's quite a big choice that you're about to make, going to university, knowing what to study. Beyond the whole doctor, lawyer, teacher, career paths, it's quite hard to know what else and what other routes that you could kind of go down. So it's definitely something I wanted to get involved in. And I just will say the support that you have throughout the whole course from Future Frontiers is excellent, from the coaching and pupil handbooks, the resources that you have available. But also Thomas was really engaged throughout the whole time. I think some of our sessions were even an hour and a half long and I didn't lose his interest once, which is obviously great. So it's definitely a wonderful coaching platform to be part of, and I'd recommend it to everyone. And it's really good to hear that Thomas got something out of it. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Jodie, and thank you again, Thomas, and all the best in your future in computer science. And we look forward to staying in touch as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Now I'm going to hand over to our head of data and impact, Rob, who's going to talk to you a bit about impact that we've seen this year whilst living online, and then also our plans for some exciting external evaluations we've got coming up.
Great, thank you so much, Tess, and so great to hear from you, Thomas, on your sort of experience of the programme. In my job, you can often get lost in the spreadsheets, so it's so nice to put those first-hand experiences together. So I'm going to briefly cover our evaluation and impact measurement work over the last year and looking ahead, which has been very exciting for us. And I'll start with our work on pupil eligibility. We've made a very conscious decision over the last year or so to refine our criteria for both schools and pupils, not only in defining the need of our intervention, but identifying those pupils who will really benefit the most from our programme. And that's especially pertinent as we focus on that post-16 transition, as Dominic mentioned a bit earlier. And you can see there that every pupil we work with meets at least one of those criteria. First, measure of socio-economic disadvantage. We often use pupil premium eligibility at the moment, but are looking to refine that in the future. The second is whether pupils would be the first in the generation in their family to go to university. And the third is relying on teachers to identify pupils who may be lacking those strong support networks outside of school. So we put a great deal of trust in teachers to identify those pupils and make sure that we are working with those pupils that need our intervention. And down there, you can see our pupil characteristics from the 2019-2020 academic year broken down. Great. Moving on to our pupil outcomes across the autumn term just gone in 2020. So we're measuring our pupil outcomes using a pre-program and a post-program survey. And you can see there how many pupils responded positively to questions before and after the program about their knowledge of themselves and careers, about their navigation skills and their self-belief. And the Student Career Readiness Index there is a new measure for us this year, and indicates how likely pupils are to make those successful transitions into further education and then later employment. And since school closures and the transition of our program online, we have placed a great deal of focus on these outcomes. And compared to our face-to-face programs, we are seeing around a drop of 5 percentage points in the uplift here, as to be expected for our new online delivery model. But as you can see by the uplift, we're still seeing very positive outcomes of our program there, even with the additional challenges of delivering virtually. And especially the positive feedback from pupils there on the right-hand side, with you got 87% of pupils there agreeing that they're now more motivated to work hard at school as a result of the program. So moving on to our external evaluations, something that I believe is quite unique to Future Frontiers is our commitment to external evaluations of our program. We've placed a considerable amount of resource into these evaluations, and we're now starting to see the fruits of our labor in terms of understanding that lasting impact of our program. So first there, we have an exciting new partnership with ImpactEd over the last year. ImpactEd are a non-profit organization that helps schools to understand the impact of interventions. And during this pilot evaluation we ran last year, we're really pleased to see that Future Frontiers pupils had statistically significant higher attendance and a long-term uplift in other engagement metrics up to a year after participation in the program, which is fantastic to see. And a separate independent evaluation by Canterbury Christ Church University actually validated these findings. They saw similar results with many different positive behaviors increasing in Future Frontiers pupils compared to a comparison group. Looking ahead to the next few years, which is most exciting, after our successful pilot with ImpactEd, we're really excited now to be expanding our relationship with them and rolling out their evaluation to all of our partner schools this year. And that's going to pave the way for the largest evaluation that Future Frontiers has conducted, involving roughly 1,500 pupils in both our treatment group and also in the comparison group. So that's going to be a study of total size of about 3,000 pupils, which we're really excited to see. And that will not only look at the impact of our program on engagement at school, but also whether, to what extent pupils increase their attainment as well. For our Key Stage 4 program, we're developing our long-standing relationship with the University of Derby, particularly their International Centre for Guidance Studies. And we're expecting this to take the form of a longitudinal study tracking pupils from GCSEs all the way through to completion of their post-16 destination. And as Dominic mentioned earlier, this is our focus now, really looking ahead. And this is a very exciting project to really see that evidence of impact. And for our Key Stage 5 programs, we are working with UCAS on an annual cycle to evaluate pupils' transitions to university. And that will tell us what impact our program has on pupils' applications, offers, and whether they accept places at higher tariff universities. So lots of very positive news, especially considering our sudden transition to online delivery, and some very exciting developments in evaluating our short and long-term impact of the program. I think if there's any questions, do put them in the box. I'll be very happy to answer them afterwards, but back to you, Tess.
As Rob just said, we would welcome any questions, so please do drop those into the chat box. I'm now really excited to introduce you to our second pupil speaker, not pupil, actually a young person now at university, did our programme in 2018 with Ashurst. Hi Shakira, it's really great to see you today. I know you don't need any introduction because you've got this all ready to go, and I'm very excited to introduce you. So over to you when you're ready.
Good. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shakira Dockery, and I'm currently a first-year undergraduate student studying law at University of Law in Manchester. When I participated in Future Frontiers, I was in the first year of sixth form, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do in the future, as I was only young, and considering the fact that there's so much career paths to follow, this was quite overwhelming for me. To be very honest, although this time was very close to structuring UCAS applications, I did not want to stress myself, as selecting a particular degree, this will determine what I want to become in the future, and this was prior to Future Frontiers. When a group of us from Oasis Academy Hadley, which was my sixth form, participated in Future Frontiers, I was assigned to Deborah, who was my coach, and I'm very grateful for her encouragement and support, as she helped me narrow my thoughts for the future, and without her, I don't think I would be in the position that I'm in now. During the 4 weeks, we went through a website which included tasks that we enjoy and do not enjoy by ranking them, e.g. like reading, writing, hobbies. And on completing these tasks, it revealed types of jobs that was suited to what we submitted. So things such as like probational officer, lawyer, psychiatrist, and HR came up for me. Therefore, using this information, Deborah and I went through the descriptions of the jobs and the routes we have to take, for example, whether I can go to university or do an apprenticeship, and the requirements such as whether my predicted grades were compatible. Although I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be in the future when this great opportunity came to an end, I did, however, leave with much more confidence in the route I could take, having a rough idea of what career paths I could follow. So ultimately, this program played a massive role in the decision I made when I decided I wanted to go into law school to become a barrister or go to America to become a district attorney. Therefore, I just want to say to my coach, Deborah, once again, thank you for your help. You've been a motivational figure in my process of education. You are one of the reasons why I am in the position that I am in now. You made me feel very welcomed and comfortable in expressing my thoughts for the future, and you guided me effectively with empathy throughout. Therefore, I hope that everything in life is going well for you, as you deserve nothing but abundance of happiness for helping a clueless, unmotivated person out for the future.
Thank you, Shakira. I feel so honoured to have heard your story talked out like that. It's just amazing to hear where you are now. And we're really happy to have Deborah on the call as well, who has left Ashurst now, but managed to get in touch with her quite late last night to invite her to come along. So Deborah, was there anything you wanted to say?
Well, yes, thank you so much for giving me the chance to take part in this. And Shakira, it's such a pleasure to see you again. It was great working with you almost 3 years ago. I can't believe how quickly that time has gone. And what I really remember about our time together is that we actually had a real laugh. And one of the things which happened was that there were so many really quite bizarre career options which came up, but it was just as important to be clear about what you didn't want to do as about what you did want to do. So from my perspective, it was a huge pleasure working with you, getting to know you a little bit. And I'm just so delighted that you are now studying law, and that I had any part, however minor, to play in helping you to reach that decision. And I could really spot such a spark in you 3 years ago. And so I'm not at all surprised that you've got where you are. And I just wish you all the very best. And I shall hope to hear further news of you in the future. But it was a great opportunity. And thank you so much for the lovely things you said. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
One of the things Shakira and I spoke about the other day was whether coming to the Ashurst offices had anything to do with the decision to study law. Shakira.
With the offices and stuff, although that the scenery was very, very good, I don't think I could just sit down and work. So for me, that's why I chose the barrister route, so I can actually like be independent, help people, and just like move about basically.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful, Shakira, and it's just amazing how many further plans you have, talking about your kind of next steps, wanting to go to America, and what you want to specialise in. It's really exciting, and we, as well as Deborah, look forward to hearing about all the successes you're going to have in the future.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing your story with everyone today.
You're welcome.
So that brings us to the close of our speakers today, and just a big thank you in particular to Thomas and Shakira that have given up their time. Both of them are currently studying, so we're really grateful for that. We're now going to open the floor to questions. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Fabia, who's going to chair this. We've got a number of people from Future Frontiers on the call. So we've got some partnerships team, program delivery. We've obviously got Dominic, the CEO, and Rob, who's impact and data. Also, both peoples are still on the call and happy to answer any direct questions you have about their experience. So Fabia, I'll hand over to you to do this next bit, and thank you again to everyone for coming today.
Great, thanks, Tess. Thank you for your questions. We've got a couple coming through on the chat. Do keep them coming, or if you'd rather ask the question verbally, then just pop in that you've got a question and I'll come to you afterwards. So the first question, and I think I'm going to direct this at Alice Harding, our Head of Programme Delivery, which is from Julia. And the question is, how does Future Frontiers support young people who are not interested in going to university to understand their options and develop their thinking around employment opportunities?
Hi, yeah, I'm Alice. It's a great question because obviously in both of those examples, our young people were interested in going to university. That's not always the case. So we present university and apprenticeship and employment in exactly the same way to our young people. The beginning of the programme is the same for all young people when they're thinking about what motivates them, what interests them. And then we get them to have a good think about what their next steps could be based on their learning style, based on their working preferences, and also based on those careers that interest them. So they talk a lot with their coaches around, okay, what pathway, so is that university, apprenticeships, or directly into employment, could open doors to those careers that they've got themselves really excited about and are motivated by. If that is not university for some of our students, so whether that's apprenticeships or going straight into employment or training, then we also encourage them and direct them to certain websites that help. So for example, we use Unifrog, which has a great kind of system on there where you can put in what you want to do, and it will give you apprenticeships and what grades you would need to get to those apprenticeships. We offer the kind of government apprenticeship website as well for them to explore and discover. So there's lots of information out there about things like apprenticeships or alternative routes to university that they would go through with their coaches. In some cases, the coaches have experience of those pathways themselves. Another thing that we would do to encourage those pupils who aren't going down the university route is potentially for their sector role model, who they speak to at the end. And you heard a little bit there about our pupils being able to speak to someone in the industry they're interested in. The pupils also get an opportunity to speak to someone who might be doing the pathway that they're interested in as well. So if they're not sure whether university or apprenticeship is for them, then they can talk to a university student or an apprentice about their experience and really relate that to their style of learning. So there's lots that we do to support, and actually we do kind of promote those next steps equally to our pupils as well. I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you for that, Alice. The next question is from Heather at the Westminster Foundation, Westminster City Council, sorry, Heather. And I'm going to direct this question at Dominic. And it's, when identifying pupils for the programme, do you work with early years support as well as with the school and families? Westminster City Council are investing in early years support, and at Future Frontiers, we do operate in some Westminster schools.
Yes, good question. And the short answer to that is that we don't work with at early years level. I think we know that working with young people and disadvantaged starts at that early age, and that actually there's a huge amount of impact you can have with young people at that age group. We've decided that we want to focus on an area that is really at the kind of at the business end, where we think that there can be relatively low resource solutions to making sure that kids are steered onto really promising trajectories. I think the approach that would be taken for early years would definitely be around sort of broader careers education and looking more generally at careers, so that young people develop an understanding of broad sectors and getting them excited about that. We think actually that the problem we can address most specifically is at that critical point in the post-16 transition. We've had to make lots of compromises, and you do as an organisation if you really want to focus in and really dig deep about how you have serious impact. Moving away from the post-18 transition point has also been difficult for us because we know that young people need support there. But I think it reflects our desire as an organisation to be super focused on this issue where we can have a meaningful impact. So unfortunately, the answer is no for now.
But don't you think, sorry, this is Heather speaking, don't you think it would be worth linking up with those early years providers to make sure that people then don't drop off the cliff at 16, so that, so that you're getting the information from those early support systems to help identify pupils?
I see. In terms of selecting pupils, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really, really sensible point. I mean, we work very closely with schools to understand that, and I suppose we assume that schools will have a lot of that information handed over. But you know, it would be great to have a conversation with you. You know, if there are opportunities there that we can take up.
Thanks.
Great, thank you very much, Heather and Dom. So final two questions so far, which I will take on the answers to these, both about our coaches. So we've got one from Chris Davey asking how they are found and selected. And then Miranda Wells has asked, could we say a little bit more about the training and guidance that mentors or coaches get, and what the time commitment is, both for the training and the coaching and mentoring itself. So the coaches that are selected come directly through our partnerships with businesses. So typically we would work with a business to recruit around 15 volunteer coaches, and they are always volunteers who have put themselves forward for the opportunity, and they come from any level or any job role within the organisation. All we ask is that they're really committed to working with young people and supporting our work. In terms of the training and the support that we give them, every coach receives 3 hours of formal training before the programme starts, and that's split into a 90-minute webinar at the moment that's led by our programmes team, and then 90 minutes of independent training where we give them lots of training videos and resources to look through. When we are able to go back to our regular face-to-face model or start to incorporate some face-to-face elements, that will transform into a 3-hour face-to-face training session delivered in the offices of our business partners. And that training is really there to set coaches up for success in the programme, and it covers core coaching skills, so how to use key coaching techniques in order to support a young person in their research and decision making, but also more specific guidance on how you support young people, how you work with young people, and some of the more practical elements around safeguarding as well. In addition to that initial training, all volunteers are supported through a really structured handbook and set of activities. So volunteers don't need any experience in working with young people or any experience specifically in career guidance to be able to deliver the programme, because they are following a set structured programme of activities that has been designed by our team in collaboration with schools and with careers professionals as well. And then they're supported throughout the programme by one of our programme managers who is on hand, either literally there by their side in the face-to-face sessions, or there virtually to answer any questions they might have and support them during the programme as well. The total time commitment for the programme is around 13 hours, and that includes the 3 hours of upfront training, the 6 hours one-to-one with a student, and then we allow for a few extra hours of prep between sessions, reading around the students' top careers, etc. We've got another question from Rebecca Scott at ARC, and Alice, I'm going to direct this one back to you so we have a bit more variety. Building on that question around our coaches, the students have spoken about coaches being really relatable. How do we match students and coaches?
Yeah, sure, great question. So this is actually something that we're working on and doing a little bit of research into at the moment, especially with the flexibility that comes with our online programmes. So whilst we're running online programmes, we are looking at matching pupils and coaches based on the coach's current job and what the pupil wants to do, or based on what the coach studied potentially at school and what the pupil is studying currently. We even ask the pupil what they want to do in the future in terms of pathways, going straight into work, university, apprenticeships, and try and match with coaches that might have the same pathway. This isn't always possible with everybody. We have a certain number of pupils and we have a certain number of coaches, so we can't always guarantee a perfect match. But what we're doing is we are matching in those particular ways, monitoring this and trying to understand whether that does create a better relationship. What we've seen in our face-to-face programs previously, when we've had a school going to a business, is that we're even more restricted in being able to match based on particular criteria, because we have fewer students and fewer coaches, so it doesn't always match up. So this is the first time we've had the opportunity to kind of on scale be matching so specifically, and we're doing lots of research to see whether that is making a difference to impact, whether that's making a difference to kind of rapport building. There are other important things that we do also consider when matching, and that is kind of coach confidence, whether a coach has taken part before, which we might match with a student who is potentially particularly shy or has any kind of additional needs that the teacher has made us aware of. So that's really important that we ensure that some of those people that need the extra support are being supported by people with a little bit more experience. In some cases, certain schools or certain pupils will also be request that coaches of the same gender, in which case we can fulfill that as well. So the answer really, the short answer to that is in our face-to-face programs, we didn't do as much specific matching. We would look a little bit at what the student wanted to do and what the coach wanted to do and match as much as we could, but it was less, we were less able to do that. With our current online programs, we're doing that a lot more and doing some interesting research as to whether that is improving impact and building rapport. But it is really important to also say that we give our coaches, as Fabia has said, kind of that thorough coaching as to how to work with any young person. And the idea is not that our coaches necessarily are giving our pupils in-depth information about their own jobs. It's more that they're asking the right questions for the pupils to come to their own conclusions about what they want to do, and then offering them an opportunity to speak to someone in that particular career at the end. So there are certain levels of kind of importance around what the pupil wants to do and what the coach is doing. So yeah, it'll be really interesting when we find that out and have more information about the effect that that's having, that we can share that and kind of use that in the development of our programme going forward.
Great, thank you, Alice. I think that brings us to the end of our questions, so I will hand back over to Tess to wrap things up. Thank you everyone for your questions.
Thank you so much everyone for coming today, and thank you for asking those questions at the end. A big thank you to our two young people, Thomas and Shakira, that gave up their time to speak today. You can find us on Twitter and LinkedIn for everyone. I'll also email round so you have everyone's contact details if you did have any further questions. And that's all from us, so thank you so much for coming.